Welcome to Spider-Verse Minute, the tri-weekly podcast where we watch Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse 1 minute at a time. I'm Caroline Slater.
And I'm her brother Sean.
Today we're doing minute 4. It starts with Miles responding to his dad's calls and ends with Miles talking to his friends on the street.
What did you call this minute?
I called this minute Presenting Miles. You know, like Columbia Pictures presents.
Miles.
Yeah.
It's the first full minute of him. We get to learn about him.
A lot of establishing things.
It's got 3 scenes in this minute that we really have. We have the end of his bedroom scene. We got a couple seconds of that from the last minute. And then it migrates, and his bedroom scene, it's 3 long shots in this minute compared to last minute. The end of his bedroom scene, and then we enter the kitchen, and there's this sort of hectic getting ready in the morning shots through the kitchen, and then it cuts to him walking down the street on his way to school, presumably.
Well, he has the uniform on, so.
We don't know if he's going to skip.
Good point. Excellent point. One of the first things I noticed, and this will kind of tie into one of the things you wanted to talk about, was that Miles' dad sounds a lot like our dad in, like, the way he talks speech-wise. Not, like, his voice sounds the same, but, like, the things he says. Particularly, you're a grown man now, let's show those teachers that. I heard that, and I'm like, I think I was even watching this when our dad was in the room, and I'm like, oh my gosh, you would say that exact thing, Dad.
Yeah, I can remember having very similar sentiments being said. Put your shirt on. Tuck your shirt in. You need to look good. You know, leave a good impression.
Exactly. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Dad. I also had a flash to the whole, you gotta get going, Miles, in a minute, when he's talking to his mom. Immediately smash cutting to, Mom, I gotta go in a minute. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's Mom.
Yeah, that mocking tone definitely, had tragic flashbacks, like, no more kisses.
No more. I gotta go. I have rehearsal or something. I feel like a lot of kids can relate to that, but that just echoed so much to our parents, especially the in a minute with Mom.
Yeah.
Pretty sure she said that exact thing to us. When we're like, we have to go in a minute.
Yeah, I like going back to him getting ready in his room. I did like his method of storing clothing is similar to what mine was, which was in a big old heap in a bin. He uses a lot of milk crates. You notice, I think I counted 5 milk crates that he uses to store different things throughout his room.
Were those milk crates? I thought it was a laundry basket that he had his.
Nope, they're totally milk crates.
Okay, I didn't.
He's got his clothing in an orange milk crate. You can see it looks like there might be some records in the back in like a gray milk crate, and then he's got some others. One of his speakers is propped up on milk crates, and so actually I think it counts 7 now that I go back and look at it.
Whoa.
Yeah, so he's doesn't need a whole lot of stuff. He can just nothing fancy for the storage, just whatever works.
He's a simple man.
Yeah, that reminded me a lot of the storage system that Dad used in his room for his shirts and shorts and stuff.
Are you kidding? The milk crate method is the go-to method. I had milk crates in my college dorm. Like, instead of a bookshelf in my New York dorm, we just had stacked crates on top of each other. That was used as my nightstand, my bookshelf, my cabinet to hold my dishes and my pots, and even my food storage. We didn't have much in that dorm to begin with, but yeah, that's what the crates were used for everything. To talk a bit about the scene a little after when he enters the room, I like sort of that chaos, but also like organized chaos of everyone's just getting ready for the day. Everyone's like, where's this? Where's that? I told you. Like, it's very mundane, but in like a good way.
Yeah, the pacing between like what we're going through now compared to what we saw previously with Peter going through his story was all of Peter's scenes were very short and they were very kind of hard cuts and hectic, and it was all this sort of like, oh, I'm fighting these big bad guys, and then here we cut to Miles, and it's just like, oh, where's my laptop for school? Like very,
Long shots. I'm singing while I'm working on my art. And where's my laptop? Make sure you eat. Do you need a ride? No, 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 no.
no, I can walk.
I can walk. How fast he said that
Yeah,
is probably like, I always found funny, but now I find even funnier since we later find out that his dad is a cop. It's like, oh.
yeah. It is like, his dad's a cop, his mom's a nurse. It's probably like, oh, get the moments. They have long shifts, so it's probably just like get the moments that you can with them.
Mm-hmm. But Miles is also at that age where he's like, I don't want to be seen in a cop car. That's embarrassing.
I mean, I'm pretty sure it's just I don't want to be seen with my dad.
Yeah, probably that too. I did notice one thing on his suitcase. I actually noticed two things on his suitcase. Going back to the bedroom scene, and you talked about some stuff in his room. I noticed that on his suitcase he actually has the Puerto Rican flag.
Yeah, I made note of that as well. He's got that sticker.
He's got that sticker right on it, and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like a nice little heritage thing, and I know a bunch of kids who like will wear their flags of like where their families are from. A good example, my one friend from college is Salvadorian, and she proudly had the flag hanging in her room because of her family being from Salvador. So it was cool to see that like that flag on his suitcase. I'm like, ah, sweet.
Yeah, and that comes from his mother's side of the family.
Yeah.
Yeah, with the last name Morales, a very Hispanic sounding name.
I also noticed he had a basketball luggage tag, it looked like. I couldn't tell if it was a sticker or a luggage tag or like a keychain thing on the suitcase as well. Did you see that?
No.
It's like right above the flag. I was paused on the frame looking at the flag. I'm like, oh, that is a flag. And then I noticed the basketball at the same time.
Is it when it's still on the bed?
It's when it's still on the bed, yeah. I thought that was kind of a cool little thing, too. Especially because, especially in the Bronx. We see it when he's walking by his friends, too. Like, kids are playing basketball. One of his kids, has a basketball. So, especially a lot of colored neighborhoods. Basketball tends to be very popular because it's a pretty easy thing to do with friends.
Yeah. There was something else. So, as he's leaving his room, there was something else I caught, and it's that at one point, it's an interesting thing that they do with dealing with motion in the movie, and it's Miles grows an extra arm.
Wait, what? Repeat that? I missed that completely.
So as he's pushing his door open, leaving his room, instead of blurring the motion between the two frames, they just keep one arm, like his arm, back behind a little further, and then as he moves it forward, that arm stays there, and then there's a second arm that comes out. It's only up there for a frame. The door's closed, the door's open with his arm back.
No, I am familiar with that technique. I forget what it's called or if it has a name. I do know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
I missed that completely. That's hilarious to me.
And like the only thing that moves between the two frames is just his arm and doorknob. He's got the double arms, and then an arm disappears, but like the rest of his body stays still. And you'll notice that a lot, like the doorknob also disappears for a frame. But like they talk about in the movie, and in a lot of animation, they do what's called on the twos, where they draw on every other frame. So even though the movie is running at 24 frames per second, it's only animated at 12 frames per second. And you'll notice it a lot in this movie, and where the characters will stay still, but the background will move. So they'll stay still for 2 frames, but then the background will have movement in one of those frames where they stay still. And you can really see it in him leaving the door, where the door opens, or the door moves pretty much on every frame, but then Miles only has, like, over the 6 frames, Miles only has 3 positions, and it's his head like turned to the side, him opened up, and then he moves forward a little bit.
That reminds me of like a very simplified version of, I forget what the technique. Quick animation history lesson for our listeners out there. There's a technique still used in animation today called in-betweening, and it was created by one of the fathers of modern animation, Winsor McKay. And what he would do is that to get like even just a few seconds of animation to be smooth, is that he would draw one frame, one position, and then he would draw another frame that like another position that he wants the character to be in, and then he would animate in between those two. So it would be like, that's how you get into it. So you know where you want to end up and you have where you're starting. You just have to get that movement in between them. It's still used today. It's called in-betweening, but it was first created back in the 1930s or late 20s. We're forgetting those dates, by this man named Winsor McKay, and he's the reason we have a lot of modern animation techniques and even animation today for it. But that technique just reminded me of that.
There's also a pretty famous video / book called The 12 Basic Principles of Animation, The Illusion of Animation, The Illusion of Life, developed by Walt Disney Studios in the 30s.
Fun fact, just to connect the two stories together, Winsor McKay came before Walt Disney, and so Walt Disney's way of saying like thank you to Winsor McKay is in Universal Studios, not Universal Studios, what am I talking about? Hollywood, what is it, Hollywood Studios and Walt Disney World? Is that what it's called?
Maybe, I'm not sure.
Hollywood Studios in Disney World. There's an ice cream stand with a giant long-necked dinosaur. I think it's called like Gertie's Ice Cream Stand. That is not a Disney property. That is a Winsor McKay creation. One of his most famous. You actually can find the movie on YouTube. I highly recommend it, called Gertie the Dinosaur. And Walt Disney put that in to say thank you, Winsor McKay, because it was because of that animation that it really helped launch like animation filmmaking in general. So there you go. There's your fun animation history, tying famous Walt Disney with one of the early pioneers of animation.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I had looked down my notes and I noticed a detail. From when Miles is walking through the living room and like right after he enters into the kitchen, if you notice on the door frame, there's height checks.
Yeah, I noticed that too, and there's only 12 heights, which means he hasn't been measured for this year.
Yeah.
Because he's supposed to be, he's 13 years old, and you can count where the, Miles 10 height is, and then it goes, the 11 and 12 aren't marked, but they're there, but there's no 13. And he grew a lot between 11 and 12.
He hit a big growth spurt.
Yeah, compared to the other ages. He's just, maybe they skipped 12 and that's his current height.
Yeah.
That's still, he grew a lot.
Or we're just not seeing previous heights and he was just a really short kid for a while. Which is also possible. Oh, I did notice this. I'm jumping around all over the place in this first half of this minute. In his room, when he grabs his notebook, there's like a split second where you can see like what's on his drawing. It looks like a robot.
Oh yeah, his on the board. Yeah, it looks like it might be some kind of robot Transformer-esque thing with a sword.
Like I think Miles is a Transformers fan. or a Power Rangers fan, because they also have that giant robot thing.
Oh yeah.
One of the Power Rangers. I wasn't a big Power Rangers person growing up, everybody, so I know very little.
Yeah, and on his, again, you get another, that continuing shot, I think we mentioned it on Friday, but all of the different variations of the way he practices his name on that. Another thing, too, is if you notice on the front of his notebook, that Miles, hello, my name is Miles sticker is the same one that appeared in the first minute.
Is it the same one that appeared? I thought it was, but I wasn't sure.
Yeah, it's the first one that appears in the on the Sony picture or the Sony animation logo.
I love when they do things. I love that detail. Right after he gets away from his mom and he starts walking away and she says, "See you Friday." That car that's on the street, it looks hand-drawn to me. Did you see that?
The one on his street?
Yeah, like right after his mom was saying in a minute, and he's like, "I gotta go," and he starts leaving, And she's like, see you Friday. That car, it's like right on the left. I looked at it and it's like, that looks almost like hand drawn.
Mm,
It was just a
I don't
neat
think so.
art different thing. Like, it was clearly not as like 3D as like the characters were. It was just a neat art thing to me. That I've noticed in a few comics too, where they'll draw the person or like what you want to focus on and what's in one style, and then around it will be in like a slightly different style or just not as detailed, so you don't like your focus doesn't get drawn away from it. They do it in video games too. I've noticed a few video games that do it. I just thought it was a neat thing.
Yeah, so as he's walking out, we get into that. As he's leaving, as he leaves the stoop, after kissing his mom goodbye and escaping from her clutches, we cut to him walking past his old middle school.
And underneath, I have to talk about it because it's my favorite song of all of the lyrical songs in the movie, Familia. It is performed by Nicki Minaj, Anuel A, and it features Bantu. It's a very cool song that is a very cool mix of like hip hop. Well, it really is just straight up hip hop, isn't it? But it like the use of Spanish and some. Oh, you know what? It has some traditional gospel elements, like specifically like Spanish gospel of like those underneath parts.
Like the part the choir's singing.
Yeah, like very like just underneath is like a background right above the Father, Father, unforgivable. This is my house, he made it personal. It's such a very cool mix to me, and it's my favorite song.
Yeah, when I first heard this, I misheard the lyrics, and I thought it was Father, Father, unforgivable. This is Miles. You made it personal, and I always, especially because it's Miles listening to the song, I always pictured, Miles. Like if this were a musical, this would be Miles' song, and he's singing it at some villain named Father or something.
I can't say enough how much I love this song. I think personally what I love about it so much is that it is like the theme that's played under Miles while he's talking with his friends, and he's in like this, you can tell he's in a very relaxed, familiar environment while he's walking by. And it's a very nice mix of like hip hop, which is obviously started in black culture, but then it also has Spanish in it, and some gospel elements in it too, which is just a very cool mix of like his heritage and the way that the whole Father, Father, how it's a prayer. It's such a cool song to me.
Yeah, and we get that overplaying as he walks past, or playing in the background of the scene as he walks past two of his friends, or a couple of his friends that ask him some questions. The one asks if he felt the earthquake last night.
He slept like a baby.
Yeah, and that's the first hint that we get of what was going on with Peter. That, yes. It might have been something bigger that was happening in the city.
Yeah. You hear some of his friends speaking in Spanish, and he responds in Spanish with no problem. And I remember this also happened in like the house too. His mom spoke Spanish, and he responded with some Spanish words. And the thing that I remember that they mentioned on the commentary that I loved is that they didn't subtitle any of the Spanish. Well, there's one part later in the movie where they do, but it's more because of a gag. But like the rest of the Spanish, they don't subtitle.
Yeah, it's very reminiscent of bilingual households where the parents might say something in the native tongue and the children might reply back in English, or vice versa.
Or even some kids who grew up like who are fluent in multiple languages. And again, I know many kids who will speak English, but then like they'll drop a word in another language, like without thinking, like as if it's just normal.
Yeah, I distinctly remember one of my friends growing up, like whenever I'd go over to his house, his mother would shout to him in Vietnamese, and he would always reply back in English. And sometimes his sister, if she was around, would reply back to their parents in Vietnamese, but he was always adamant about not speaking to them in Vietnamese.
Yeah, it's very much of what's going on in those households, and I do love that they don't subtitle it. It's like, it's not important. It's just part of his life. Like, it's not a big deal. So I do love that they don't subtitle it, but they still just have him switching back and forth.
Yeah, I did go through though and translate it for those curious.
I am one of those curious. That would be me.
So when he throws in, oh, and here comes my terrible Spanish pronunciations.
Woohoo! See, I have an excuse. I took German in high school.
Yeah, I have no excuse. I took 4 years of Spanish.
Exactly. I took 1 year of Spanish and switched to German.
So his mom, after he throws his clothing in his empty suitcase, his mom shouts to him, "Famo chacho," and literally translated, it's "we go, boy," but it's pretty much, we gotta get moving, son. Like, hurry up. And I was reading that, chacho is a Puerto Rican slang from muchacho, which is boy or son or young male child. And then when he finally gets out, he, asks where his laptop is, and his mom replies back to him, oh lordy, donde le dejesta, which is pretty much, where'd you leave it? Although I noticed that's what she says.
What a great mom answer.
Yeah.
Where'd you leave it?
I noticed though that's what it says in the script, but I don't think that's what she actually says in the movie. I wasn't able to catch, because that scene's so hectic, I wasn't actually able to catch what she says, because she kind of mumbles it as she's walking past him, and then Miles, replies, "Yo no sé, I don't know." And so, and they obviously don't subtitle it, and the subtitles, when you do have them turned on, just say, "Mother speaking in Spanish."
Thanks, subtitles.
So, the subtitles aren't helpful either. And then when Miles is eating from the, I think this is my favorite line that his mother says, but as Miles picks up some of the rice from the crock pot,
yeah,
she mumbles under her breath, "Ay Maria," sorry, she mumbles under her breath, "Ay Maria, este niño me tiene loca," which pretty much translates to, "Oh Mary, my boy is making me crazy." Or, that kind of vibe is just, oh Maria, he's making me crazy.
What a mother answer.
And then his dad comes up behind him and hands him his laptop and puts it in his backpack.
What? Okay. Full honesty. That knowing what she's saying in Spanish now too just makes that whole scene even better to me, because you can already tell they're like doing family talk and just being like very normal family, but to know that it's even more typical family things just makes it so much more amusing to me. I don't know why. I really don't, but I love it even more now that she's just like, "This kid's driving me insane. My son is driving me insane."
And then when they get out onto the stoop as he's leaving, she shouts to Miles, "Papa, yeah, Yamame." Okay, yeah, I got this. This one I can actually pronounce.
Yes. Apologies to any Spanish-speaking listeners who are listening to this. We are not.
She shouts to Miles, "Papa, llámame," which is, give your dad and I a call. And then Miles replies, "Okay, mommy, hasta luego." So, okay, mom, okay, mommy, see you later.
It's so simple, but I do genuinely love that they just communicate in Spanish like that. Like, okay, bye. Like, just
yeah, you can tell, like, it definitely feels like someone who grew up in a bilingual household wrote these lines,
Yeah.
because it's not just like, sometimes you can tell when someone who isn't familiar with it, and they're just like, oh, throw in some Spanish words, and it's clearly just
Ta-da!
like, oh, that's not how
That's
they how bilingual households normally speak. You're not just like blah 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 Spanish word blah blah blah
yeah.
blah blah.
A great example. My last semester, I'm a theater arts major, and in my last semester of school, two girls were doing a scene, and they were both Hispanic, and they both spoke Spanish fluently. And our director asked, like, well, why don't you see if you can find places to slip in Spanish and, make it natural and, like, how people would do this. And they were able to do it, and it sounds so seamless in how I've heard bilingual families switch back and forth from English to Spanish. Like, they'll start saying to the end in Spanish, and then they're just speaking Spanish for a little bit, and then they switch back to English. So having seen it and witnessed it and being put in other things, it's definitely nice to see. Yeah, you can tell that someone who is familiar or has grown up in a bilingual household wrote those lines.
Yeah, and then even like talking to his friends, he's still conversing in Spanish. Coming around the corner, one of his friends asks him "Te va bien en la escuela," which can be more literally translated as "Are you doing well in school?" Although that feels kind of clunky for a child to say, so I imagine there is a much better translation there. And then Miles replies back, "Seguero que sí." So he's like, "Of course." And then,
Of course I am.
of course I am doing great.
You're fantastic. Well, the female friend that he talks to at the end of the scene,
Yeah,
she asks, like, how's that new school going for you? And mention of the new school, so we know he's going to a new school. I caught Miles saying, what did he say? He's like, it's nothing or it's easy or something like that.
yeah. He seems to play it off very.
Like, that it's not it's like, it's so nothing to him.
Yeah, he kind of says like, "Oh, it's easy," and it's said in that playing it cool way.
Yeah, and I was kind of wondering if it maybe was even sort of a talk about his intelligence, because it's shown that Miles is a pretty smart kid. Not in this minute, but in minutes not long after this. It shows Miles, like, he is pretty intelligent. So part of me wonders, like, is it really that easy? Is he just playing it off to be cool? Is it a bit of both? Like, I don't know. But I thought that was just such a fun line, too.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's something that comes up in Friday's Minute, where we'll get another look into the school that he's going, apparently going to for the new school year. And you mentioned the friend that asked him how's it going. I noticed when I first saw her, I immediately thought of I thought she might be Catherine Bishop, which was in the comics. She was one of his classmates at the other school, at the
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn Vision Academy,
Mm-hmm.
but then, looking at her a little bit closer now, she doesn't really. The only thing that's the same between the two of them is she's got slightly colored hair, and and Catherine even just has like, yeah, and
Clearly
she's
the
just
same
got
person.
like a little bit of hair, whereas his friend at Brooklyn Middle School has all of her hair colored. So, you know, looking closer,
Yeah.
she's probably not. But that was the first thing I thought. It was like, oh, maybe it is her, because he definitely, like, when he's like, oh, you missed me, I gotta like, ooh, does Miles have a lady friend? Um,
That made me laugh. That whole miss me. I still live here. Wait, miss me.
I think that's what really made me think that it was her, because they in the comics they do end up dating for a little bit.
Do you want to talk about, since we brought up the Spanish and that's kind of what segued us into this to segue back to the Spanish, you want to talk about the voice actress who plays the mom?
Yeah, so Rio is played by Puerto Rican actress Lauren Velez, and she's got a twin sister, Lorraine. Her and her sister do also have 5 other sisters and 1 brother. That must have been a crazy household growing up.
Oh my gosh, that
Yes.
does sound crazy.
And she had her Film debut in 1995 to I Like It Like That, playing the Lissetti Linares, and she got the Independent Spirit Award for best female lead from that. And then her first like major main role was in New York Undercover from 1995 to 1999, and then probably her most well-known role is she played Maria LaGuerta in Dexter from 2006 to 2012. And in 2010, she won the Rita Moreno Ola Award for Excellence from the Hispanic Organization of Latin Actors. So she's a pretty good actress.
Yeah. She's also in the upcoming movie Shaft that has Samuel L. Jackson, Regina Hall, and a few Jesse Usher. I don't know who she plays. I haven't seen the movie, but she's got quite the resume. It's impressive. Oh, she was also in the first Purge, apparently. Yeah, I love her as the mom.
Yeah, I think she does a really good job
Yeah.
imbuing the spirit of a mom.
The spirit of a mom, the spirit of a Hispanic mom, the spirit of a Hispanic mom to a teenager, no less. Yeah. I genuinely, like, she's not on screen a lot, but when she is, I genuinely love her and feel for her.
So that's all I have for this minute.
Yeah, that's really all I have as well. It's really just, I will say this. I think it's a great beginning introduction for Miles. I was saying, as I named it, Presenting Miles. It's a very quick, it's almost a mundane version of Peter's backstory, where we got all of the quick smash cuts montages, where this is just a very mundane long shot rundown of Miles and his background. Like, you see his parents, you see his old friends, you hear some music that ties into it, and you get little hints here and there about who he is too.
You want to close it out?
Sure. So that is all we have for this episode. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you in the next minute 5.
See you next time. Goodbye.